Guys, it is March 31st, 2021, and with me tonight, Rich Purtell, Eric Cooper, Emmy Dayton, Diane, I don't know your last name, but bear with me, okay? What's that?
No worries, DiDonato.
DiDonato, okay.
DiDonato.
Guys, what we're doing, we've been really active in trying to help New York State understand that legislation can destroy a state. We should know that. We have seen it. Rich, in particular, has spearheaded several efforts to quash bad legislation. So we're going to be here talking about that tonight. Your comments, your shares, your likes, all that stuff is welcome. And remember, guys, success is not final, failure is not fatal, and courage, it takes courage to continue, and that's what counts. And these guys here, all these people here, share that conviction. So, Rich, if you don't mind, let's talk about what we're here for.
Yeah, the main mission of this group is the Libertarian Party of New York Legislative Affairs Subcommittee. Long title. Our purpose is focused upon emphasis on state government legislation. Our objective is to find and promote good bills and find and attempt to reject bad bills. And if there's ideas we'd like to get turned into bills, we're going to talk about that too tonight. We have some ideas that some have been around for some time. We'd like to see them turned into bills that can be voted on and made into legislation. So again, state government, not federal, not local, not county. So it's a targeted focus. If there's problems that are, legal in nature, maybe they should go to the Attorney General. That's not our focus. If they're more accounting and fraud and corruption related, maybe they should go to the New York State Comptroller. Again, that's not our focus, but we might try to channel people in those directions. So it's small group, all volunteers. We're not paid lobbyists, any of us. Everybody here most of us has another job, and we're doing this on the side to try to make New York State more liberty-oriented. We too often are voted the least free state in the country in surveys by Cato and such. It's embarrassing. We'd like to get out of that mode. We want more social freedom, more economic freedom, et cetera. Now that I've defined kind of the basic thrust of the group, I thought I'd go into one issue we're trying to frame, and that's why I wanted to bring up kind of the purpose. There's a problem in New York. Seems to be a little bit different in different parts of the state. It's called surplus proceeds theft. And in upstate New York, and Tim has people near him that have experienced it personally. Robert Force is a common name. Save the Force Farm is a group out there there you go, trying to help him out. That's more of a case where he was targeted for political beliefs, it looks like. Don't think he had a mortgage, or maybe, is that correct, Tim? No mortgage at all, or very minimal?
No mortgage at all?
No mortgage at all?
They had his money in an escrow account. They had the county had his money in an escrow account, and they sold his property at auction.
So he got run over for political beliefs and whatever reasons, and he had no mortgage. Then we go down to Suffolk County, which they have, oh my goodness, they have the red light problem. I think someone ran for assembly on the red light camera problem. It looks like there's a tangled web of corruption down there with swoop and squat staged car accidents causing injuries and looking for money back on that, and then they drive these people into near bankruptcy, and then they take those people and target them then to go on a mortgage foreclosure and then take their house and then don't give them any equity because they cheat them out of the surplus proceeds due to various ticky-tack rules. So we got on both directions. We got upstate New York. It seems like they're targeting people with no mortgage. Downstate New York and Long Island is where Suffolk County is. Right. They go after them where they have a mortgage. So, but this issue is just it's so voluminous, and I've been struggling. The committee here has been struggling just to try to get it down to what's the problem from a state legislative point of view. Are the laws in New York weak relative to other states? Is it a matter of enforcement? Again, that would probably go to the Attorney General. Is it a matter of fraud and corruption and people kind of dancing on the edge of what the law says? And that might be something where we're going to get a comptroller doing New York State Comptroller do an audit. So I want to bring this up tonight. It's a sensitive topic, lots of comments about it, but we're still in an investigative phase. And I just want us to get zeroed in more on what we need to do, and that's to look at the legislation, how it's being applied, how it's being abused, and what's got to be done. Is it legal? Is it analytical? Auditing, or is it something else? Go ahead, Tim.
I'll be honest with you. What I think, and having had several conversations with Robert Force, one of the issues that someone who goes through this might face is that the laws do not, in New York State, clearly protect an individual's property rights. There should be some issue, some sort of benefit of the doubt always granted to the individual, especially a guy like Robert who was actively trying to straighten this situation out. And then to find justice in this complex system where you have to hire a lawyer and they have to find the right law to sue on, I think that is daunting. Doesn't even cover it, right? It's baffling and it's crazy, and he deserves attention for his plight. So, anyways, I'll hand the ball back to you. But I know Robert's case inside and out, or close to inside and out, and I just find everything about it to be the power of the government versus the power of the individual. And if they decide to take your stuff, they're going to take your stuff.
Yeah. And then another spin off to this that I've asked about, and again, this is legislative. In 2011, New York passed the land bank system, and I've had suspicions about that having risks of corruption and waste, and so if someone, and here's the thing is, abandoned property. What does abandoned property mean? I mean, is property truly abandoned, and is it truly you hear these slogans: zombie property, abandoned property, etc. If there's someone that still cares about getting equity back from a property, then it's not abandoned. And if in some of those cases where it's being called abandoned and taken and put into a land bank, the land bank effectively is buying it from the municipality for $1. I think basically is a legal transaction. Well, and there's no tax auction. There's no technical surplus proceeds to share back to the original owner. So could that be a problem too? I don't know. That's part of the investigation. We have to look into all this. Yeah, Eric, go ahead.
I think that's probably correct. I know that some municipalities will, if there is a reason to foreclose on a property for unpaid taxes or something like that, oftentimes it won't even go to auction. They'll just keep it in their possession if they say that they have a particular use for it.
Wow.
And so,
that's the whole purpose of the land bank, is to pull the properties into the land bank is one of those, private. It's like the Federal Reserve. It's not public. It's not private. It's in that gray area in between. So they're getting the properties from the government. The one nice thing in New York is that they had to be cleared of liens and back taxes, so they can't be handed over to the land bank while there's any still legal ties on them. So the municipality has to eat that and cover that up before giving it to land bank. But I still think if there's a party that has interest in equity recovery from that property, they're going to be better off if it goes to auction and fetches maximum dollar and gets back whatever above and beyond what taxes are owed. So again, investigate it. This is something I'm speculating, looking for evidence. How often does that happen versus, we know mortgage foreclosures being driven, looks like in Suffolk. We know that the priority in Otsego, where Tim lives, seems to be going after properties that have no mortgage, because when you don't have the mortgage, you don't have the bank attorney. The bank doesn't want to get screwed. So the bank's going to want to look out for their interests. So in secondary benefit to that, them looking out for their own interests, is they can also somewhat look out for the property owner's interest too. Yes, Tim.
To speak to Robert's specific case, people in Otsego County who have mortgages on their properties have had their taxes go in arrears 4 or 5 years, no foreclosure activity, or on the eve of the foreclosure activity or the day after the foreclosure was supposed to have taken place, they find a way to redeem their property. I think what happened to Robert is so obviously incorrect that I can't believe we haven't been able to find some justice for him. That points at this complicated system.
Is there two separate things going on here, where one is a mortgage foreclosure, which would be initiated by like a bank or whoever holds the lien on it or whatever, and then the other one is by the municipality or taxing jurisdiction?
Yeah, and what's claimed in Suffolk is that the bank attorneys actually argue for an acceleration of the debt to try to speed up the process. So apparently, Suffolk's got the bank attorneys arguing, in the process to take the property away from the person that, they're supposed to be helping the person out. But we know the banks sometimes try to scam homeowners out of their money. So
when I was looking at the law for the mortgage foreclosure portion, it said that like excess proceeds would be returned to the court, but it didn't say necessarily where it went from there. So I'm curious, what happens in Suffolk County, whether they're just kind of like testing the boundaries of that, and from the court it kind of goes back to the municipality or something like that.
Yep. But this is where it's something this is where, if this is going out to some people, is we really need a good law expert, and not only to see the laws in New York, but laws in other states, to see, how do we compare to other states, and what can we do to model other states better so we don't have this problem so much. I know Georgia, I've seen a lot of criticism of their land bank system. This appears to be worse than us, and that's a case where I brought up earlier. There isn't that clean demarcation between the property being transitioned to the land bank and still being in arrears. So it might be turned over to the land bank where there's still, liens open, taxes not paid. So, the municipality really hasn't cleaned the mess up before turning it to land bank. And that's actually not a good thing. So it's better off to have that cleaner line between when it's being legally challenged and when it's handed to the land bank.
Yeah.
So moving along, I think we're in good. We're on schedule. 8:45. Mr. Jim's up next. So another issue we've been talking about, and we'll get into this next. We'll talk about the scaffold law, then I guess we'll go after that into marijuana legalization, which you can segue into that, Jim, through discussion about the scaffold law. But would you like to just kind of fill everyone in on what the scaffold law is, what it does, and how long we've been trying to fix it, and what kind of things we'd like to do with it?
Yeah, well, first off, New York State's the only state that has the scaffold law in all of the United States. Basically, what it is any gravity-related injury, any fall from a ladder, from a roof, scaffolding, whatever. Basically, the contractor, the homeowner are held liable, which in turn just skyrockets the general liability insurance, the workman's comp insurance, and everything, because only one person in the end is responsible to take care of all these costs, and that's the business owner. And regardless of again, back into the marijuana thing, which for the most part, I don't care what you do on your own time. I'm a business owner. You go do what you do on your own time, whatever. But don't let it affect your job. And if some guy goes around the corner of a building and hits a crack pipe or whatever, and then gets on a ladder and thinks he can fly, I don't think that a business owner should be the one liable. I think it's individual responsibility is what it comes down to.
Like everything else.
And in New York State, there isn't any individual responsibility when it comes to the scaffold. It is, and it's skyrocketing the cost of insurance all the way across the board. Some counties have decided to go against the scaffold law. That's great. But in the end, the taxpayers and anybody with general contracting insurance, their prices go up to cover the guys in other counties anyway. So it's legislation that should have been gone a long time ago. Illinois did it. I can't remember what year, but it was in the 90s.
We're one of the last states, right, that still has this?
We are the only state left.
The only.
Yep.
Amy, do you mind me asking? Don't we have I paid workers' comp insurance for a number of years. Like, don't we have a pretty comprehensive workers' comp situation already? Like, do we need these extra, like, I don't know, trial lawyer bonus packages? Do we actually need them? Like, what do you think?
Can I answer that question? Because I actually went to a lobby day for the scaffold law a few years back, and one assemblyman there offered that as kind of a solution, but I haven't heard this thrown out too much. He said that for a lot of on-the-job injuries that are covered by workers' comp, they have what's called a predefined benefit. So the owner is held liable, but it's a predefined benefit. There's no lawsuit. You can't get a ridiculous settlement. It might be, let's say you lose a finger, it might be $3,000 or something like that.
It's a limit.
It's not going to be a ridiculous sky-high settlement. So predefined benefit, no legal costs, and that's an option. So he suggested that maybe it'd be a solution with scaffold law injuries to make a predefined benefit. So you're cutting out the trial lawyers and the whole legal expense in the system, setting up a reasonable settlement for people instead of having to go to court. So that's one option that's been suggested. The other option is to have the main thing that we hear about is contributory negligence, which is what Jim's been bringing up, is that, if the person's not acting responsible, they have the proper safety equipment, but they're, they're impaired in some reason of their own choice and their own error, there should be contributory negligence in court used to reduce the settlement that they get. They should not get maximum settlement when they share part of the reason for their injury.
That's exactly right.
I contributed. I don't like the idea, guys. Maybe I'm a liberal crazy nut, but I don't like the idea of somebody getting injured at work and having their whole life dragged through a court system. I can get my brain around a predefined benefit system that solves everybody money, that is equitable and just, versus, hey, this guy doesn't get $1 million because the prosecuting it, the lawyer defending the insurance company made him look like a schmuck. That makes me sad in a way, like I'm a humanitarian, even though I'm a libertarian. I think you guys get where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah. Did you make that into the law itself or any revisions to it that certain elements are, not to be considered in the court as it's making its decision?
I think that's a good compromise. I think some of the pro-business groups are stuck in the contributory negligence mode because that's really what they're going to be the biggest win for them. But maybe a better compromise would be, as Eric and Tim are suggesting, put quite a number of these injuries into the predefined benefit category, so that it's settled more like many other workman's comp injuries, and that would simplify things. It just leaves just a few injuries to go through the courts.
But the whole absolute accountability thing for it, regardless of somebody being negligent or, just really being unsafe, is not a good way to really do any sort of business or law. Even when you're dealing in absolutes, you're going to have serious issues. Yeah. Same way with qualified immunity with cops, right? If you don't face any accountability for your actions, you're not gonna change your ways.
Right. And then the consequence too is that the job sites are less safe because if you have nothing to lose from bad behavior, you're not being discouraged to act badly. You're going to be less likely to use your safety equipment. So
I agree with that. I do think we have to have some accountability to the individuals. Like a lot of these jobs that we're talking about that involve the scaffold law are already reasonably high paying jobs. So I think that I do believe in individual responsibility, even though I don't want someone getting dragged through the court to save an insurance company money. But yeah, individual responsibility is a pathway forward. And I think we've lost that concept in New York State. Am I crazy, guys? I don't know. How do we feel about that?
I think it's going down the tubes a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, let me just say hi to Ryan Bedford. Ryan is and I don't know if you saw, but Robert Force is in the audience. Robert, we were talking about your situation. As you know, I'm appalled. Rich is appalled. We're actively trying to help craft better ways of moving forward. And we still want to see justice for your situation. But thank you for being here, Robert. Ryan is a great guy. Big supporter of libertarians, big, great communicator, goes to events, does things on behalf of Queeter and myself when we were campaigning. He's just a wonderful guy. So these are the kind of people that we're trying to help stay in New York State with our activities here. And so I think to segue, if you guys don't mind me segueing away from scaffold law, I think that libertarians deserve a big round of applause. Okay, I think we've been very actively talking about decriminalization. Yeah, pat yourselves on the back, guys, because we've been talking about for years decriminalization of marijuana. Larry Sharp saying regulate it like onions. Say it, like it comes out of the earth. How can it even possibly be as illegal as it is? How can we use this as a tool to destroy young men and women who are simply just avoiding alcohol and smoking some weed? Like, how can we do that? And I think sometimes small government folks they fall for the old lines about marijuana that actually came out of a big business war of like marijuana competes with my paper pulp making holdings, and like, so let's let go of that stuff. Let's move into the future, and let's celebrate the fact that libertarians positively impacted New York State by advocating for the decriminalization of marijuana. And let's also let everyone know that we're ready to stand against all the stupidity that's going to come out of this complicated legislative process, because I'm telling you right now, that's coming too.
It's a mess. There's three boards that are going to regulate the legality. You can't grow it in your own house until they set the rules, which could be as long as 18 months after the first retail sale. That could be up to a year from now.
2 years.
So, hey, we legalized weed, but in reality, it's not for another, 3 years. I guess you can walk around with 3 ounces now. But let me still just a mess.
The marijuana.
Thank him for his comments there.
Perfectly correct.
Yeah,
Victor's right in that comment right there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. There's without these special trial lawyer feasts, there is still liability no matter what, right? Did I say that correctly?
Yep.
You earned it, Ryan. All right, so I got on my high horse there for a second, Rich. I apologize. Where are we heading now? We want to talk about marijuana for a little bit?
You're right on track. We were supposed to start on marijuana 8:55 or 2 minutes early, so we're right there. So, yeah, marijuana legalization. I'm a football fan. So what legalizing marijuana got us into the playoffs. It wasn't a Super Bowl victory by any means. It's 140-some page long bill. It's got way too many things in it to complicate and to process and make it still a thriving black market for one, and also crony capitalism galore. I got to credit Kevin Wilson in Rochester in that area, who does a radio show up there, for kind of exposing that part of it. Labor peace agreements. I never saw that labor peace agreement term ever before. 57 years old, working in construction for 30 some years, and never saw that phrase before. But effectively, it's it's to work with collective bargaining and so on. Unnecessary. They put that in the bill at the last minute. What that's going to do? I mean, who would like to just think through who would like to maybe participate in this? Well, you've got upstate New York, small farmers, microbreweries, wineries. We've if any of you've done wine tours over the last couple of decades, we've made it more business friendly for these small operators to do direct retail sales. So you go there, you do a tour, you look around, maybe even pick your own farms. That's the trend, is to get you on because it's not profitable enough to sell them for them to do their business all wholesale. So a lot of them are using this direct retail business model. So it's more like entertainment, where you go there and you're paying for the entertainment, plus you're paying for their product. So how many of these places have organized labor? I mean, a lot of them are small. It might be a sole proprietor and a couple of kids or something. It might be 4 or 5 people working there max. It might be a family kind of business. They're all boxed out of it. I mean, they're not going to be able to get into this. With the way this law is written, it's set up for the big corporations. Again, crony capitalism. And as Eric said, too many delays on when people can just grow their own and use it themselves. It's just full of a lot of things that we have to work against. Back to the scaffold law, there is some leverage by the Lawsuit Reform Alliance of New York and others to say, hey, give us the scaffold law because of the marijuana, because they're worried that marijuana might increase, on-the-job injuries. Before the show formally started, we all discussed that. That's something the Libertarian National needs to get on, because we think that's really a lot of speculation, that the increase will be insignificant or small, And there might even be decreases because of things like reduced absenteeism. Maybe people will smoke 1 or 2 more joints on the weekend instead of drinking 3 or 4 more beers and not be hungover Monday morning, and they'll actually show up for work. So that should be something businesses would prefer. So there's a lot to it. But yeah, marijuana, we are happy to see it pass, but a lot more to do. The thing there with our, again, the size of our group, all volunteers, no professional lobbyists, 100 and some page bill to try to now fight against, is what I want to suggest here is we've got to partner up. The Drug Policy Alliance was key, working with the legislators on getting this passed. They've been criticized a bit maybe with some of their ideas to put restorative justice terms in it. That's a lot of what complicated the whole bill. But I think that might be a good group for us to partner up with to try to get out some of the crony capitalist language that we want gone, and to enable the people to private grow and then expunge records and all that. Look, I think there's going to be good results on expunging of records. I think the Democrats really want that. I think that's going to happen pretty successfully. But I think
that's the best part of the bill.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is all this crony capitalism. It's going to be too much like the licensed casinos, to make an analogy. There's going to be a limited number, and look what's going on with the casinos. Not to get too off track, but right now they're all got their hands out looking for huge bailouts, and that's what happens too when you do these crony deals. Is now these people it's kind of like a public-private partnership. They feel like, oh, we went through all these flaming hoops to get this license from the government. So now in exchange, we want this bailout and these special privileges because we went through these special efforts. We're not an ordinary business. We're an extraordinary business because we got a license. We're special compared to another free market business. So I think that kind of thing could happen in this, with the marijuana legalization. And 5-10 years from now, maybe the market won't be doing so well. And some of these specially licensed distributors will be going to the government saying, hey, you licensed us. We're selling this and we're not making money. We need some money now from the state. So I don't think that's a good approach.
Or there's going to be, maybe some people start making less money, the people with licenses, and they want to restrict the amount of licenses that go out to protect their own profits. That's going to happen.
That's going to happen.
It's everyday occurrence, right? Because I hope, forgive me for a second, but I want to interrupt. Diane, I'm going to put you right on the spot right now, because we basically have you here. We've almost, I don't want to say we've ignored you, but how do you feel about this marijuana legalization thing? What are your thoughts about it?
It's a gray area. There's some good points, and then there's some bad points. People also have to think about, they said something about that getting behind the wheel will still be illegal under the influence. Is that right? Okay.
Well, that's on a
that's what anything.
Point. On a technical point, the biggest challenge with impairment.
That's a concern. Impairment. Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah, but there's never going to be a. What the thing is that the people that think it's as easy to test for inherent impairment with THC as alcohol, it's never going to happen because alcohol is water soluble and THC is fat soluble. So you can do a blood test for alcohol and you can tell pretty easily in real time if someone's impaired.
Correct.
But it's just never going to be that simple for marijuana intoxication. So that's just a root problem that we have to escape from. Yeah, Eric.
Isn't it a little bit hypocritical to 5 seconds ago be talking about scaffold law reform and making sure that people are kind of accountable for their own decisions, but like not taking the same position when it comes to marijuana? People are going to smoke weed, but they face the consequences of their own action. And I do believe it's still appropriate for businesses to kind of screen however they feel appropriate if they want to kind of screen for marijuana. And I would also say, who knows what future technology will bring? People are very inventive, and there's clearly going to be a lot of money flowing into testing for, marijuana and whatnot. The government's going to spend tons of money on it.
In the black market.
So,
it's been tough. Sure we're 5 years since Colorado legalized, and we're still struggling with the testing method. I just think we need
5 years is nothing.
Oh yeah, true. And in terms of medical technology, it takes decades. It seems to do anything. With all the licensing it has to go through. So, I've suggested I just goes back to 6 years ago when I ran for state senate. What we need is just a universal impairment test, meaning that you have, especially good for business, tougher for driving, to be honest with you, because it's not easy to establish a baseline. But in the business world, when you get hired, you can take a baseline electronic test that looks at your vision and your reaction time and things like that. And maybe you want to update that test every few months. And then if it looks like you got an off day, you know, then they're concerned that maybe you're impaired. You do the test, and if you flunk it, oh, you're impaired for some reason. Let's send you home. And the reason doesn't really matter. The fact that you're impaired and you could be a risk to yourself or others, send home. I mean, that could work well in the business world. For driving, it's going to be tougher because how often would you be able to evaluate someone for a baseline? But this kind of theory could easily work in the business world. And it should, usually business ideas are where things can get, you know, established and the bugs worked out before you turn it over to the road pirates. Yeah, Eric.
Well, I was going to say, the way that they wrote the law, I believe it now says that even the odor of marijuana or like burnt marijuana is no longer like reason to like search somebody or something like that, which maybe is appropriate, but also like perhaps there should be some discretion on the part of police officers. Obviously, they've abused it for a number of years, but you know, it was also illegal. But, you know, they should maybe be able to say like, you are driving impaired. And as far as I'm concerned, I think that's probably an appropriate rule, even for libertarians, right? Or probable cause, anyways.
I don't know. I'd like to have some kind of evidence that they're impaired. I think we need. Something. I don't know what yet, but we need to have some kind of proof. So,
not that that's like the proof that would require like be where the ticket or something would be drawn, but rather that it's some sort of probable cause. If you smell like freshly burnt marijuana, which you know you can tell if you're a cop or anybody that's ever been around weed, like, you know, that something was freshly burnt, like, okay, maybe this guy is, and then further investigations required. That's all I'm saying. And the point that the law restricts police officers from being able to do that, I don't know, is that appropriate? Is that a little bit too far?
Tying their hands,
You want to test my libertarian creds? If they don't have an accident, I'm not sure they should be getting a ticket, to be perfectly honest with you. If they're not speeding, they're not damaging people's property. I am, and guys, I know that people who are impaired are menaces. Okay, the issue is you can argue that in court, but should you have to? If you didn't commit a crime, a property damage crime, a real crime, and this is philosophical, I guess, right? You know, like, do we have to prosecute those people all the time? Do we have to drive them out of New York State? Like, do we have to drive them to other states so that they can get their licenses there? Like, do we have to do that? I'm just wondering.
You're kind of reminding me of the movie, The Minority Report. You know, pre-crime. So
it is a pre-crime issue, correct?
They haven't committed a crime. You're suspicious that they might. So it's definitely pre-crime use of the police. So that's the slippery slope.
Yeah, it's not good.
And I hate that about New York. Okay, I hate the traffic tickets. I hate my middle class working friends who are trying to make a living getting nailed with a $300 speeding ticket or $500 speeding ticket, having to hire a lawyer, having to travel back across state to try to fight a ticket that just costs them huge amounts of money. It drives me nuts. I know I'm like a conservatarian, but there are certain things about. I support my friends that are police officers, but I don't want this to be a revenue generating concept. And it seems like in New York, that's what it is.
Oh,
by the way, guys, Chris M. Olensky joined us tonight, man. How are you, brother?
I'm well, guys. Yeah, I'm not how long you're going to have me. I'm actually on the Staten Island ferry right now, headed over to the island. Somewhere about midway after we pass the statue, service kind of goes in and out. But I'm glad that
open water.
You have me right now. One of the things I wanted to touch on here, where I caught up with you guys, we're talking about DUI impairment under marijuana, and I want to be forward. This was a single issue that actually got me involved in the Libertarian Party back in 2018 when Larry Sharp was running. I've got a history of DUI myself. Okay, I am currently under what is called a permanent license. I actually, before I got my act together in 2007, I was a multiple offender of DWI. I did not cause any property damage, any physical injury to anybody else, but the consequences of my actions, were what was leading me down the road where I potentially could have if I didn't, change my ways, and I've been sober ever since. I went and put myself into rehab, and I had enough, and that was it. Now, let's fast forward to today. Why do I still have a permanent revocation? In 2013, His Majesty Andrew Cuomo, with a stroke of his pen, wrote to regulatory rules and policy into the Department of Vehicles, statutory policy that was not approved in 3-year sessions previous by the legislature. I actually sat down locally with Donna Lepardo and spoke about this, and she took one look at me and looked at her chief of staff sitting there with her, and like, this is the fallout. This is exactly why we didn't pass this legislation, right, for permanent license revocations, because there are people out there who will change their lives, okay? And this is what's going to be dangerous here with DUIs that I perceive for marijuana. If you get 2, 3, 4, or 5 or more, you are permanently banned for life right now in New York State underneath the DUI, the current
Wow. I know
case. It actually went to the Court of Appeals in 2017, and unfortunately the case lost. And from my work behind the scenes on this, right, this is not something that people righteously go and rally about, right? Let's just get drunk drivers back on the road. It's not really a great public issue because, let's be honest, people have died, okay? And they will never get that opportunity to have their loved ones back. Okay?
That's what scares me.
But for those of us that have changed our lives, myself, for instance, I have a daughter that was born after I became sober. And I have had to raise her now without having the ability, to put her in the truck, to take her fishing, go camping.
Yeah, that's
any of
not
those things. I've always had to rely on somebody else's ride, public transportation, or my own 2 feet. Okay, I piggybacked her literally everywhere, to and fro, for as long as I could, until she got too big now. So she walks, she can move on her own, but still, to try to live any sort of normal semblance, right, of a life in today's day and age, especially if you're in the upstate New York region, okay, when you don't have mass public transit.
Are we going to talk about zoning now and how bad our land use laws are?
Difficult is not the word to describe what life is like. So I fear that there's going to be more and more permanent license revocations due to marijuana charges here, because the science of actually being able to detect what your blood THC levels are the science isn't there. Now, this was something that I also went down to the Department of Transportation in 2017. I sat in an 8-hour national summit, okay, on this, and they were still hashing it out back then. The technology hasn't gotten any better, and I fear that this is going to have some very negative consequences on a lot of people in the future here.
Well, it's not like you wouldn't before have gotten a DUI or driving on the limits, something like that. I mean, it's not as though there's going to be more, other than the fact that maybe more people will choose to drive while sober, but I kind of doubt it, since you can now smoke in public places.
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks, Chris. I want to segue to our next session because we just have 20 minutes left, and I'd like to devote the remainder of the time on lockdowns, vaccine mandates, mask mandates, and the other health-related tyranny we've been dealing with.
Oh my Lord, yes.
And I want to thank Chris for a lot of help in those venues. He's been instrumental in a lot of, especially beating up on people on Facebook. The vaccine passport. That was the protest. Tim was there today.
Oh, so good.
I
want to give Tim a few minutes. Just tell us about who was there, what was said, and
I hope there was a good turnout.
Yeah, it was okay. I do. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to circle back to Chris's point for a quick sec before we segue totally out. His story about getting his license is not unique. Okay, people put themselves at risk to get to work in upstate New York because of a risk of a very adverse interaction with police officers because of traveling and the necessity and the requirement and the entitlements to travel that are limited by arcane law structures. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yes. So guys, yeah, that's right. Rich, I went to Albany today. I went to the anti-COVID passport. People are in fact incredibly passionate about this issue as we witness on our social media. I almost want to say, without trying to insult some of the people there that were being very active, some people, to me, maybe are, I don't like to say this, guys. This is going to hurt, okay? Are a little too passionate, okay? I think that myself, Cody Anderson, that we were there today, and Cody did a great job talking about how this app is, in fact, medical tyranny. Now, that's obviously true. Some people were going a little bit further about the COVID thing. The COVID thing is a serious situation. If you are concerned about your health, if you have definable comorbidities, okay, readily accessible to you, like, okay, avoid getting COVID, okay, take care of yourself. But freedom is essential. Freedom is essential to liberty. It's essential to life. The dystopian nightmare that we're presenting our children, and I apologize to my children regularly, and all of us in our age group, and that may have been able to have impact on legislation, should be apologizing to these kids every day, because what we have allowed our government to do here, guys, is embarrassing. Okay, so I'm passionate about the issue too. There was probably 80 people there with the threat of impending rain. And I thought that was a pretty reasonable turnout for today. We actually had counter protesters, a young lady with a dog, no mask, coming up and screaming at people, telling them that they should get a vaccine. And guys, I'm not anti-vaccine, okay? If you feel comfortable wearing a mask, if you want to get a vaccine and you believe in vaccine technology.
That's what I said the same thing. I said the same thing.
And I assume lots of people are there. Lots of people that I respect believe in vaccine technology, including myself. My kids get vaccinated regularly for things that are problems for them. They used to have asthma, so we're very proactively getting them the flu vaccine, stuff like that. So I believe in vaccine technology. I believe it's appropriate. This one feels rushed to me. I don't feel particularly susceptible to COVID, and I could be wrong, but I don't have specific comorbidities for it. But the Excelsior Pass itself, there's liberals. Dr. Naomi Will, former Clinton feminist, big supporter, is going way out of her way, putting herself on the line, saying, look, this is in fact medical tyranny. This is terrifying. How they can link this app to everything in your life. Okay. Yeah. Access to your money, access to going to the movies. It's a bigger deal than just the movies, though. Accessing your big
box grocery store.
Yeah, going into a grocery store.
Yes.
All of these things become possible with this app. Yeah. So don't download this app. And Diane, I'll turn the floor right over to you. Let's hear what you have to say about this. All right, so lay it out there.
I am, well, I will tell you across these common groups that nobody wants this, and there is legal action being taken by the people that are suing the state for other infractions, if you will, other overreaching. Okay, so but what we need as many people as possible, because I had a kind of a message with Rich. This is coming on the federal level too. We know it is. Okay, so New York, it's not going to stop in New York. New York is just the model for the rest of the country. Okay. Exactly. Yes. So what do we do? I mean, we need as many boots on the ground. We need legal people. There are people in the federal government that are speaking out about this. There are people in the state that are speaking out about this. The state level government, local. So I guess how do we stop this thing from becoming and around the world too? They are fighting it around the world. I know the European Union is trying to push it through without a lot of public input. But what do you see as, I guess, a solution to try to stop this?
The grassroots efforts help, and I'm going to make a point too that I've been making about the other direction, the other side of it. So yes. the consumers are the ones being asked to use this passport.
Correct. Yeah.
Businesses and producers are losing, because the promise of a germ-free workplace, which is what we fought and killed with A2681. We worked our butt off to kill the 2681
Thank
bill.
you so much.
That was the promise of pass. Yeah, that was the promise of a germ-free workplace. The technology's not there. We don't know enough about methods of disease prevention and transmission to say that businesses with an Excelsior Pass, okay, all our employees will be guaranteed to be vaccinated. All our customers that come in will be guaranteed to be vaccinated. And now the businesses will be saying, okay, everybody's vaccinated. No one should get sick. Someone will get sick.
Yeah, it's not true.
And then now the business will be sued because they've set this standard that this is somehow going to guarantee a germ-free workplace. So I don't think the consumer should be rejecting this on the grounds of medical tyranny and liberty. And businesses should be saying, no, we don't want this liability. We can't. we don't want to require this of everyone, and we're going to end up, even though it's freedom of association, they're taking a risk that they should not be taking. They should say, look, if you feel uncomfortable coming here because not everyone will be vaccinated, possibly, then don't come here.
I agree with that.
If you think that you're afraid to go out in public, then get vaccinated. Aren't those the good solutions? So why do we have to have this type of tyranny imposed? I think everybody loses. The consumers lose. The businesses lose. There's no winners in this, except if you love tyranny.
That whole
Yeah,
germ-free environment thing.
I mean, we have to accept that. A lot of our people that we know do not understand or relish freedom. It scares them. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, Eric. You probably have a much better point than what I'm making. Go ahead.
I mean, I think that's a very good point. I think in general, like, of course, people don't normally see it as tyranny when you're looking at it as a more like micro scale. You're like, oh, it's just this one issue. In this case, it makes sense. But of course, there's the whole ratchet effect that it eventually just gets tighter and tighter and tighter and whatnot. And then, it doesn't always hit the same issue. So as it, kind of circles the spectrum or whatever, then eventually you have tyranny all over the place. But to Rich's point about that germ-free workplace, it's just a huge waste for a lot of employers because, again, germs or diseases spread in different fashions. Early on, people thought that COVID spread through like touching of surfaces and stuff like that. Turns out that's really not the way that it's spread, but the MTA is spending tons of money shutting down the trains overnight to like clean them. But really it's spread through aerosols in the air, right? It's not really spread from, touching of surfaces and whatnot. So if we're going to require that all these businesses do all these practices, it just wastes their time and money, of course, it's going to be different again, depending on, whatever the threat may be in any given instance. And I thought one of the best arguments against the whole vaccine passport thing was just like right now, these vaccines, kind of to your point, Tim, they're authorized under emergency use, because they weren't subject to the same standard of testing that the FDA normally requires. Of course, the FDA is its own problem, but
it is.
If you're going to authorize it with less testing, how are you also going to mandate that everybody get it? People should still be able to make their own choices, and we see that. And I actually think that is a salient issue for a lot of people, and something that you can use to kind of bring people on board because. Most people support like your general vaccines, the things that have had years and years of like testing and just use. But these ones, there's a lot more hesitancy. And I think that if you're trying to build a coalition of people to oppose the vaccine passports, or whatever, you got to reach those people that kind of understand that, this is kind of new. I'm perfectly fine with taking the vaccine, but I know a lot of other people aren't. And you have to kind of reach those people.
Yeah, and the next thing that's going to happen, and it's being discussed, but we're going to see bills for adding the COVID-19 vaccine to the childhood vaccination schedule.
Yeah, no, I know.
And this passport system, so the survival rate for kids is 99.998%. And again, as Eric said, it's this is an emergency use vaccine. It hasn't had long-term trials. They got the most of their life ahead of them. So if there's some surprise, unknown, long-term bad effect from this vaccine, they've got 80 years of their life ahead of them. Whereas, some of us old folks have maybe 20 or so. It's just not fair to the kids. And I think, the passport system, if that goes through, if they're looking for that kind of compliance, it's going to be added to the schedule. And then the issue with that too is it's more costly. You can get a flu shot in a pharmacist, but when it's on the childhood mandatory vaccination schedule, the kids have to, their parents have to take the kid to a physician to get the shot. It will be part of the measles, MMR, all those other shot regime, and they'll be getting it, in early years. So I just don't think it should be more like the flu vaccine. If you want it, get it. If you don't get it.
I agree.
Get it at the pharmacy or the Walmart or whatever. To put it into this whole spiral of the childhood vaccination schedule.
No,
adds another element of problem. So
yes, it does, and that's going to be actually challenged also.
Yeah,
on a lot of levels.
I just want to say something to the pro-vaxxers out there. When you're talking, guys, and this is a real thing, okay? When you're talking to some of the more staunch anti-vaxxers, you get reactionary to them. But a lot of them, guys, have experienced problems with vaccines in their life. we can have a politer
Yes.
conversation about whether to get a vaccine or whether not to get a vaccine. Okay.
Correct.
So when you're calling an anti-vaxxer a lunatic and implying that they don't know what they're talking about,
It's not true.
most of them do. And it will be up to them to tell you. Some of them have been had to sign non-disclosure agreements about their vaccine injury, but
They went to
vaccine
court.
injuries are real. I'm not trying to make you paranoid about them. I believe in vaccine technology. And Amy, I'm going to dump this football right in your lap because you've been quiet for too long. What do you think about what I just said right there? I mean, can we have a better conversation about vaccines as a society? I mean, or why can't we have a better conversation about vaccines as a society?
We need to have a better conversation. We need to have a kinder conversation. Everybody's all hyped up in their emotion right now. No one's thinking logically. Everybody wants freedom. They want to be, able to make their own decisions, but yet
Correct.
they don't want to let other people make their own decisions at the same time.
Yes.
And that's what's wrong right now. It comes back
Yes.
to individual choice.
Individual responsibility.
Religion. Some religions are gonna say you shouldn't do it. Things like that.
That's another part of it.
Guys, let me shout out to Dan Donnelly here, one of the hardest working libertarians in the state. Honestly, guys, if we had 10 more Daniel Donnellys, we would be winning elections all over the world. All right. This guy, and you can see he's thoughtful too, right? The nexus of coercion is wrong. If businesses and customers want to use the Excelsior Pass, that's fine. But the government shouldn't be conditioning the right to conduct business on use of Excelsior Pass. I think that's fine. If I say, look, I have a great restaurant, prove to me before you come in, you don't have COVID, fine. I personally hope that person loses business and changes their mind. Just like I hope that Christian Baker changes his mind, all right? And bakes cakes for everyone that wants to come in. To me, this concept is very similar, right? If as long as we don't force the issue will rise or fall to the level that it needs to be at for everyone to protect each other. When the state mandates stuff, and I think Dan would probably agree with when the state is mandating these things or threatening to mandate these things and then calling them voluntary, that's where we lose our humanity. That's where we lose our reality. It gets to be, it's sad, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to get too emotional on this show, but guys, this is a bad deal.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I love the my body, my choice thing because there's another analogy that works. Okay. You choose what goes in your body. You choose what's right and wrong for you and accept your risks and the consequences, guys. We've been talking about risks and consequences all night.
Correct.
And I think that's an important thing for us to continually hammer on. Here we go. We're planning ahead. Ryan Beffer, what are we going to do for the 4th? I don't know, guys. What do you think? Should we do a podcast or should we get together and shoot off fireworks? What do you think?
I don't know. Are we going to be allowed to gather?
Oh, I listen. Don't even get me started. They're not going to be stopping me this year. And guys, to be honest,
that would be a cool idea.
Yeah, I live in a rural part of New York State. Some of these things don't affect me the way that people that live in urban areas are affected by them. So I lack understanding. My friend Vic is from Long Island. You've seen his comments up here. He's an actual doctor. He was on some of the front lines of the COVID thing. He kind of feels like I'm a lunatic when I get a little anti-masky going on. And to me, we went to the same college. Vic is smarter than me and more dedicated than me, but I graduated. All right. So I understand statistics and stuff like that. And some of the statistics, the way the government uses statistics, it's almost like the news media uses statistics. They're trying to stimulate your id to get a reaction out of you. And I think that's another piece of the problem, that we're not getting accurate interpretation of data and we're not getting real interpretation of data. And Vic, big anti-lockdown, pro-COVID precaution. And both of those things I can respect. And I can respect his advocacy on those issues.
I suspect you'd be a fan of the Greater Barrington Declaration.
He's not quite there, to be perfectly honest. He's more like he and I debate regularly on my personal page. Not debate, discuss really, because discussion is better than debate. And I wouldn't say he'd sign on to the Great Barrington debate. They were almost anti-COVID is real to a certain extent, or at least that's how they got perceived. I'm not saying that they were, but that's how they were perceived. Vic is a rational empiricist. He's looking at our situation and saying he doesn't understand why upstate New York got locked down at all anywhere. And I think a lot of people can sympathize with that thought. We didn't have the problems in upstate New York that they had in New York City. So
I don't know. There were definitely parts of upstate that did. Ontario County got hit pretty hard while I was still living there.
Yeah, Otsego County, though, for example, had like 12 COVID cases, and we were locked down for 3 months, 4 months before we even started talking about opening things back up. It was
But that's why you need more
insane.
localized control over it, if there is.
Wouldn't have that been better and simpler for Cuomo? We couldn't blame him for as much if he'd allowed us to control our own situation. Let's go through some of these comments because there's great comments out here. Mr. Olinsky, who was with us, not sure where I cut out, but to wrap my point that there's a permanent license revocation with multiple DWI offenses that is DMV policy and not written law. This means that although someone has served their time and changed their lives, and guys, this is a big deal, this continuing punishment of, okay, anyway, the DMV will revoke your license for life. You can go beg, you can go pay a lot of money, you can hire a doctor, you can hire a counselor, they'll make statements on your behalf, and you still won't get your license back. This is dangerous because the technology for accurately testing marijuana impairment is not present. Chris is a big civil libertarian, okay, civil libertarian. He is on the side of the individual. And I agree with what he's saying here. I fear many will unfairly suffer the consequences of another one of Cuomo's tyrant decrees. Thank you. I think that anybody want to offer some commentary on that?
He's dead on. Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, I think Chris is brilliant. I think he does a lot of work. I think that's a great point.
I mentioned it earlier, but I think that a lot of this also gets back to our terrible land use policies that require people to essentially own a vehicle to operate in society. You know, I think that if we stop subsidizing the sprawl in our communities or requiring that people build on larger lots, we would have communities that are more walkable, bikeable, and are more, what's the right word? Not profitable, but makes more sense for trains or whatever. You know, the way that our communities grew up in the late 1800s and early 1900s were around trains and passenger trains. You know, when the car took over, that's when those services really started to die out, and then for various other reasons. Yeah. So if we stop subsidizing this sprawl, yeah, go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, we went from trains and their land grants, and if people want to study the 1800s and the big, you know, the Gilded Age, you know, trains and their land grants was a big problem, and then we went right from there to zoning. So yeah, went from one problem to another. So we didn't really have any good development of a community concept, walkable concept. Then you travel to Europe where they've got communities that have been there for hundreds of years, and you see it's completely different architecture, and it's all based on government policy. Yep.
There were some pretty good private streetcar developments, you know, in, I guess it would be kind of like the 1920s and 30s. But again, once you face competition from cars where you can be, you know, more flexible as far as, you know, when you go and when to arrive, you don't have to be on such a set schedule. And also it's a little bit more comfortable and whatnot, you know, yeah. And then you subsidize it along with that. Of course, if you subsidize their competition, you know, you're going to get less streetcar developments or whatever. But
yep.
My roads, my libertarian roads, Eric. I like my car, man. You ain't taking my car from me.
Did you scroll A4602 yet? I forget if that came up yet. Yeah, I see you've been putting things across the banner. Has that come up yet?
Yeah, please. Let's talk about a guy or a group of people that are actually putting forth what I find to be acceptable legislation.
Yeah, so a lot of the issues with the vaccine mandates and mask mandates and lockdowns, it's like it seems like we're always saying, you know, we're always on the defensive saying we don't like this bill, we don't like that bill, we don't like this bill. And I think I posted and I said, maybe this is ironic, but this is a bill that's negative. But so we're supporting a bill that's a negative bill. A4602 is a bill that prohibits vaccine mandates. So we're
yeah, like why do we have to do that in the first place?
We're supporting a bill that is a prohibiting bill. So, but anyway, everybody get out. If you haven't written to your assemblyman about A4602 yet, please do so. It's DePietro.
I love him. Yeah,
it's defensive. So if this bill passes, it's going to make it that much harder to come up with vaccine mandates and vaccine passports and so on.
For everyone, yes.
Yeah, and it'll make it harder to add the COVID-19 vaccine to the childhood schedule, which the teachers unions want. So everybody right in favor of this bill. It'll help stave things off. Who knows how great the defense will be? I mean, this is kind of like a resolution. Sometimes town boards and such write resolutions, which are kind of like, a feel-good move, but often they don't have a lot of power. So, but hey, let's do it anyway. I think it's at least let's do something positive on this.
Yes.
Yeah, Tim.
Okay, our friend Tom Stebbins of the lawsuit. After
New York, yeah,
okay, made the point that if we guys, people in the audience, you, I, Emmy, Eric, Diane, Rich, if we don't write letters to our assembly people, 30 cat ladies control the entire fate of New York State. I think that's how he put it. I'm not sure.
We're gonna have to fight
Because
against
they will write their assemblyman and their senator once a month with demands. And those guys try their best to listen to their constituents. In other words, the point I'm making is they don't hear from us as often as probably they would like. They want to know where we're at. And they every letter they see, they feel like it's a impactful statement. They see it as representing a much larger number of people. Go ahead, Diane, please.
No, I'm sorry. No, I was going to say my assemblyman is Republican Kevin Byrne, so he's pretty reasonable and rational, and so I think he would definitely support this. He supported the us against the religious exemption repeal and all of this. If we still had that in place, it's also harder for them to force it on everybody. They also took away the medical exemption as well when they took away the religious piece. But yeah, we definitely, these teachers unions, can't dictate this. But yes, we do have people writing to assemblymen, senators, even if they are not on our side per se, because they do need to hear our voices too. Yes. But definitely, as I said, there is legal action being taken. Hoping it works. I mean, it may have to go all the way to the top for a lot of this stuff. I don't know, but we definitely have to do something because it should be. It definitely should be a personal choice.
Yeah. It should be at least promising that. I don't think that Cuomo, at least from what I've seen, has a very good track record in his court cases.
They are going against him. Actually, the Supreme Court has gone against him a couple of times. So that, to me, that has to, help us.
And another point too. Another point too. Go ahead, Jim. No, you go ahead.
It's important. Everybody needs to start contacting your legislator, assemblyman, whatever, and tell them what we stand up for, what we disagree with. That's important. We need people from all across the state. I don't care what party you're in. Well,
I'm in downstate upstate, but
put your voice out there. As much as people don't really believe it, Cuomo isn't really the king. A lot of this legislation starts at the bottom, and he just signs it later.
Yep, this is true.
I'm glad
coming down the pipe.
I'm glad you went first, Jim. Yeah, I was going to reinforce what you just said. Is that 2 or 3 sentences from a resident in New York, everyday resident in New York, 2 or 3 sentences, even with spelling errors or grammar errors, if you don't feel real confident in your writing, if it's personal, if it's from a resident, from a voter, the 2 or 3 sentences is going to have more impact and more leverage than a flowery, perfectly worded 2-page dissertation from a group like us that gives you as a form letter, and they get 500 copies of that same form letter. It's going to be more impactful to see people taking the time to write in their own words, even if those words, just a couple sentences. All it takes is a couple sentences.
Oh, thank you.
Huge. They don't expect perfection.
Thank you.
They want some passion, right? They want to know that we understand the dumb decisions that they're making, and we want them to stop it, and that they're participating in, because it is a battle in New York State in the assembly. There is a disproportionate power associated with one party. So they talk to each other and say, this is what's best. Everyone will adjust, and we're doing them a favor. So we need to, as we move forward, guys, we've got to come up with a strategy for decentralizing that power. And I think we have some ideas. I think but we all have to kind of work on this together. There are Democrats, they show up. Dr. Naomi Wolf, guys, they show up saying these things are tyranny. Like, so there are Democrats in New York State that know, and guys, I don't even want to point fingers, but there is a disproportionate power associated with being a Democrat in New York State right now.
Yes.
And somehow we've got to fix that. I say
Yes,
elect
we do.
libertarians. What do you say, Diane? Elect libertarians. Say it.
Yes,
Say it.
Love your plan.
libertarian, sure. I'm a piece of that, so I have no issues. Yes.
All right, fantastic.
100%.
Let's run down through some more comments, see if we can find something else to get us stirred up. And guys, we're kind of winding down to the amount of time I like to spend on these things, but this was an absolute blast. Amy,
Okay.
you got any closing remarks for us? Put you right on the spot, right? You're just
Yeah,
like, no.
I mean, why do I gotta close this out?
Oh, no, I'll close it down. I'm just putting you on the spot. You've been quiet for too
Excuse
long.
me. Yeah.
No, we just get active. We need people to get active. If you guys are seeing legislation, or whatever,
Oh,
that
definitely keep up on it. Yeah.
isn't out there on the forefront, and you think it's a disaster, or you think it's one of the best things, reach out to your assembly people, your senators, whatever, and just keep your voice heard. They can't represent you if they don't know what you're thinking.
I agree. How about you, Rich? You got it. Well, let me work the way around the room here. We'll go to Eric next. What do you got, bud?
I would say that for anybody watching, the LPNY is going to do our best to help organize our efforts against some of these tyrannical laws and everything coming down the pipe. But we cannot be aware of everything. And so we rely on the information that might be brought from interested parties that maybe have a specific interest in a bill that, maybe we're ignorant of. So if there is something like that 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 you think that we should take action on, let us know, and we can maybe help organize some sort of opposition to that bill. So we rely on your information, and we can hopefully help support crushing some of these bad bills coming down.
All right, Diane, you're up. I'm gonna bat cleanup here, but Rich is gonna go next. But Diane, you're up. What do you got to say to everybody?
Okay. Yes, we're definitely gonna keep on top of any legislation that we shouldn't that shouldn't be passing. And we will, I guess, get the word out on our libertarian friends here. But definitely write to the assemblymen, senators, and things. So definitely a good idea to keep having our voices heard. Go to these rallies and protest and such. So definitely do our part. Get as many people involved as possible.
Rich, how about you? Where are you at?
Let me double up on Eric's comment. We're all volunteers here. Everybody in the LPNY is a volunteer, all the way up to State Chair Cody Anderson. No one's collecting a salary. Many of us have other full-time jobs, and this is something we're doing on the side to help improve the state. So everybody can be a bloodhound to help us. If you can be a bloodhound and watch for something bad out there, or something good out there, either way. If you see something you really like or something you really don't like, get in touch with us. Get in touch with Tim just put a link up there. You can get to our website and find people there. You can contact Tim, myself, anybody else here on this call now. We'll certainly look out for you because there's a lot of it's a complicated mess up there in Albany, and we're certainly going to miss things. And the more bloodhounds we have out there sniffing, the less we're going to miss. So we can certainly use your help to help us find the problems.
I think that's great. And I think what we did here, what we're doing, our successes are helping point people in the right direction. I think all of those things are a big deal. The most important piece of the puzzle, though, guys, is number one, Libertarian Party is still a party regardless of that garbage letter that you got from your local board of elections. We are still an active party in New York State dedicated to making a difference however we can. I have people at the Otsego County Libertarian Party. If you're interested in getting an endorsement, we have a letter or a form we'll have you fill out. We'll check it out. We'll offer you an endorsement. Maybe we're going to help you campaign. Maybe we're interested in making a positive impact on our community through people who believe in freedom, through the concept of responsible taxation and hopefully lower taxation. These are things that we're driving for, working hard for. And guys, remember, if we give those clowns an inch, they're going to hang us with our own rope. You guys all have a good night, and I will talk to you later. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Tim.
Good night.
Good
Been a
night.
pleasure. See you guys.
Yeah.